Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Monday, November 29th. This is Africa 54.
As the Omicron variant is detected in more countries, scientists race to find answers. U.S. President Joe Biden's senior health advisor sounds the alarm on Omicron. And Americans brace for the holidays as another pandemic year approaches.
We begin with global jitters and reactions to the latest variant of the coronavirus, Omicron. The variant's emergence has triggered a strong global response as countries worried that it could spread fast, even in vaccinated populations, impose travel curbs and other restrictions. On Monday, 3 companies, BioNTech, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, announced that they are working on vaccines that specifically target Omicron in case their existing shots are not effective against the new coronavirus variant. BioNTech SE said it had started work on a vaccine tailored to Omicron, along with partner Pfizer. Moderna said it could take months to begin shipping such a vaccine, according to its Chief Executive Officer, Stéphane Bancel, who spoke to CNBC TV. Meanwhile, as nations around the world continue to monitor any incidents of the variant, 3 European countries on Sunday reported cases of Omicron. Edward Barron reports.
The new Omicron coronavirus variant kept spreading around the world on Sunday, with 13 cases found in the Netherlands and 2 each in Denmark and Australia. It came even as more countries tried to seal themselves off by imposing travel restrictions. The Dutch health minister said 13 cases of the variant were found among passengers who were on flights from South Africa that arrived in Amsterdam on Friday. Authorities had tested all of the more than 600 passengers on those 2 flights and had found 61 coronavirus cases, going on to test those for the new variant. First discovered in South Africa, the variant has now been detected in several countries around the world, from Germany to Australia to Israel. Last week, Omicron was dubbed a variant of concern by the World Health Organization. It sparked worries around the world that it could resist vaccinations and prolong the nearly 2-year COVID-19 pandemic. Omicron is potentially more contagious than previous variants, although experts don't know yet if it will cause more or less severe COVID-19 compared to other strains. However, the chair of the South African Medical Association, Angelique Coetzee, said in her experience its symptoms were mild.
There's no reason for panicking as we don't see severely ill patients. It might change going forward. But the hype that's been created currently out there in the media and worldwide doesn't correlate with the clinical picture.
Countries have imposed a wave of travel bans or curbs on Southern Africa to try to stem the spread.
Edward Barron of Reuters filed that report. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa said on Monday that the world needed to resist unjustified and unscientific COVID-19 travel restrictions that mostly hurt developing nations. He spoke remotely at the Forum on China-Africa, which started Monday and is being hosted by Senegal. Earlier, when addressing the nation on Sunday, Ramaphosa said he was deeply disappointed by rich Western countries for their knee-jerk imposition of travel bans after hearing about the new variant.
We are deeply disappointed by the decision of several countries to prohibit travel from a number of Southern African countries, including our own, following the identification of the Omicron variant. This is a clear and completely unjustified departure from the commitment that many of these countries made at the meeting of the G20 countries in Rome last month. Now, these restrictions are completely unjustified and unfairly discriminate against our country and our Southern African sister countries. The prohibition of travel is not informed by science, nor will it be effective in preventing the spread of this variant. The only thing the prohibition on travel will do is to further damage the economies of the affected countries and undermine their ability to respond to and also to recover from the pandemic.
President Ramaphosa said authorities would not be considering economic lockdown restrictions for the time being due to the availability of vaccines for those aged 12 and over. Many South Africans feel they are being punished for their transparency and hard work in keeping tabs on the way the virus is mutating. South Africans rushed to get vaccinated against COVID-19 on Monday as the country's health facilities were being prepared to cope with the newly identified Omicron variant. Health Minister Joe Phaahla told a news conference on Monday that the government was doing everything possible to cope with the new strain. The discovery of the variant in Southern Africa has caused a strong global reaction, with countries limiting travel from the region and imposing other restrictions for fear that it could spread quickly, even among vaccinated populations. However, scientists have yet to determine how deadly it is when compared to earlier strains that caused COVID-19 or what effect existing vaccines might have on the illness it causes. On Sunday, a South African doctor who was one of the first to suspect a new strain said Omicron appeared so far to be producing mild symptoms. The World Health Organization warned on Sunday that the overall global risk related to the new Omicron variant of COVID-19 is very high. In a document released Sunday, WHO said Omicron is a highly divergent variant with a high number of mutations, including 26 to 32 in the spike. It said that given mutations that may confer immune escape potential and possibly transmissibility advantage, the likelihood of potential further spread of Omicron at the global level is high. The WHO document says depending on these characteristics, there could be future surges of COVID-19, which could have severe consequences on a number of factors, including where surges may take place. U.S. President Joe Biden's senior health advisor says Omicron appears to be more transmissible than other variants, but health officials are still not sure if it causes more severe disease. VOA's Arash Arbasadi has more.
Days after South African health officials announced the discovery of the latest coronavirus mutation, now known as Omicron, travelers in Johannesburg say this feels like deja vu.
After being stranded for 2 years because of COVID, not seeing your family, my parents were deathly ill, so I had to come back when the borders were open to come and see them. And now, only to realize, well, it's happening all over again.
Many countries have already started barring or restricting travel from southern African nations.
The reaction of some of countries in terms of imposing travel bans and such measures are completely against the norms and standards as guided by the World Health Organization.
Dr. Pata called the travel restrictions draconian. On Sunday, U.S. President Joe Biden's chief medical advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, said travel restrictions won't stop the virus's spread as much as it will buy time to act.
Utilize the time that you're buying to fill in the gaps. And by time biding, you learn more about the virus. You learn what its relationship is to the antibodies induced by vaccines. And above all, you use this time to really put your pedal to the floor and get people vaccinated and get people boosted. It's going to give us a period of time to enhance our preparedness.
Fauci went on to praise South African officials for their quick transparency in identifying and sharing details of the Omicron variant. And while he says it's too soon to talk of lockdowns, Fauci added that U.S. and South African health officials plan to meet again Sunday. Friday, 61 passengers who arrived in the Netherlands on 2 flights from South Africa tested positive for the coronavirus. On Sunday, Dutch health officials said they found at least 13 cases of the Omicron variant in that group. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News.
In West Africa, suspected militants killed 4 soldiers in Burkina Faso's northern Lorum province on Sunday, according to the army. The assault came a day after protesters marched in the capital of Ouagadougou, accusing the government of failing to stop the mounting violence. Anger has been mounting for the last 2 weeks since 53 people were killed on November 4th in the worst attack on security forces in years. Since then, at least 26 more soldiers and civilians have been killed in scattered attacks in the West African country. Pope Francis on Sunday made an impassioned appeal for authorities to respect the humanity of migrants as Britain and France continued to trade insults over the deaths of 27 people trying to cross the Channel. The pontiff dedicated nearly all of his Sunday message to the defense of migrants, telling the several thousand people in St. Peter's Square that he felt pain over recent tragedies. Francis, who has made defense of migrants and refugees a cornerstone of his papacy, condemned traffickers who he said reduced migrants, particularly those sent back to North Africa, to slavery, selling the women and torturing the men.
Let us think of how many migrants are exposed in these very days to grave dangers, and how many lose their lives on our borders. I feel pain when I hear news of the situation in which so many find themselves. Those who died in the Channel, those at the border of Belarus, many of whom are children, those who drown in the Mediterranean. So much pain thinking of them, and those who are sent back to North Africa and captured by traffickers, reducing them to slaves. They sell the women and torture the men. Of those, even this week, tried to cross the Mediterranean, looking for a land of prosperity, instead finding a tomb, and so many others.
After the drownings in the Channel, French President Emmanuel Macron told Britain on Friday it needed to get serious or remain locked out of discussions over how to curb the flow of migrants escaping war and poverty. France later cancelled an invitation to British Home Secretary Preet Patel to attend a meeting on the issue on Sunday in Calais. President Xi Jinping announced on Monday that China will provide an additional 1 billion doses of vaccines for Africa to battle COVID-19. Xi made the announcement in his keynote speech via video link to the opening ceremony of the 8th Ministerial Conference of the Forum on China-Africa, which kicked off on Monday in Senegal. She is said to help the African Union realize its target of vaccinating 60% of African population by 2022. China will provide another 1 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines for Africa, including 600 million doses for free and the remaining 400 million doses in ways including joint production. The 8th Ministerial Meeting of FOCAC in Dakar, the capital city of Senegal, is a major event between China and Africa held once every 3 years. There have been 3 FOCAC summits held to date, with the most recent one held on September 3rd and 4th of 2018 in Beijing. Still to come, Germany will have a new government next month after 3 parties agreed to form a coalition. But first, Heidi Adams tells us what's on tap for Wednesday's Straight Talk Africa. We'll be right back.
Be sure to join me for the next Straight Talk Africa. We'll look at the future of finding work in Africa. With a generation of young Africans more educated and more unemployed than ever before, what and where are the jobs of the future? Also, higher education with a higher purpose. We'll take you inside a one-of-a-kind African university that says it's cultivating future African leaders who will transform the continent. Join me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
An exhibition that examines the border wall between the U.S. and Mexico has opened at the National Building Museum in Washington, D.C. The exhibition looks at the structure from the perspective of design and architecture, but also reflects its environmental, historical, and symbolic impact. Maxime Moskalkov has the story.
Building the wall on the US-Mexico border has been a politically divisive issue. That's why the National Building Museum in Washington felt it was important to tell the story of the wall with their new exhibition, The Wall El Muro. What is a border wall?
The National Building Museum is our nation's museum to consider the built environment and its impact on our lives and our communities. And we believe that the wall is one of the most significant built environment issues and projects of the past century. And we wanted to have a context for people to consider its evolution and its impact.
The exhibition is an immersive multimedia experience containing hundreds of photographs, artifacts, video and audio recordings, as well as more traditional installations. Its opening coincides with a record-high influx of migrants trying to cross the southern U.S. border, putting pressure on local border communities and U.S. authorities.
There was a lot of political conversation about the border wall, or southern border in particular, with lots of opinions and attitudes about it, and it was very clear that a lot of people don't understand our border. So hoping in this exhibition that visitors will come in and will get a better understanding, get a history of sort of how we ended up where we are.
The exhibition shows how U.S. immigration policies have changed over time and how the wall was built. Displays illustrate changing White House policies, the expanding length of wall sections, the number of detained migrants, and the rising number of Border Patrol agents. In 1924, for example, there were only 450 Border Patrol guards. By 1992, there were 4,000, and today there are more than 19,500. Since the late 1990s, more than 8,000 people are estimated to have died crossing the border into the U.S., mainly from heat strokes and dehydration.
The conditions are really hostile, both in weather and terrain, and so many of those people don't survive.
Part of the exhibition displays works of art. Artist Ana Teresa Fernandez has painted sections of the wall blue so that they disappear, fading into the color of the sky. Another installation is a children's seesaw swing, designed by architect Ronald Rael and designer Virginia Sanfratello. It symbolizes unity and connection, regardless of nationality. Maxim Moskalkov for VOA News, Washington.
COVID-19, rising inflation, polarizing politics. Americans are entering the holiday season with a wide range of worries impacting the mental health of some. VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias has our report.
Americans are bracing for the holidays. Some will be gathering in person with their loved ones for the first time since the pandemic's onset almost 2 years ago. And this could lead to strong emotions, especially over delicate matters.
Speaking from personal experience, people definitely have very different views on vaccination and that kind of thing. So I'm sure that'll definitely be a point of contention.
A lot of what we may not have known about some of our peers, colleagues, and friends may have come to light, particularly on social media. And I think that it'll be important to have those, real-life conversations to understand what people's true beliefs are.
And that will mean being sensitive to people's state of mind after a rough year, says psychiatrist David Charney.
There's a general increase of irritability in the entire population. Whatever comes up, it's not going to be improved by getting into an argument because you're not going to change anybody's mind. Find the areas where there's community of spirit and thought.
A mindful approach is also recommended towards those who are grieving a COVID loss.
What people need is a chance to describe their thoughts and their feelings in their own way and in their own good time. If they are not ready to talk about it, leave them alone.
Paying attention to one's own mental health during the holiday season, especially if spending it alone, will be essential, notes Professor Jagdish Kupchandani, who has been monitoring Americans' mental health during the pandemic.
14% American adults are addicted to internet. It's causing them serious anxiety, symptoms of depression, and also the fact that their social life is disrupted.
Finding a balance when using technology will reduce the stress, he adds.
Avoid boredom, isolation, do something new, learn a new skill, get a hobby, go out, volunteer, help someone.
Sherry Gallery, whose family has been selling Christmas trees for nearly 40 years, urges people to be around nature.
This, is our small way, I guess, of helping mental health. You know, if people can smell the beautiful smells of live pine, fir trees, that helps.
It's a joy that Chef Adams Hernandez doesn't take for granted after the financial difficulties experienced by the restaurant industry this year.
Finally, we came and had more options, to get like Christmas tree, like we just bought now. So it's pretty exciting.
Veronica Valderas Iglesias for VOA News, Alexandria, Virginia.
Germany will have a new government next month after 3 parties agreed to form a coalition ousting the ruling Christian Democrats of outgoing Chancellor Angela Merkel. The new government of Olaf Scholz faces an early test of foreign policy as Russia has deployed tens of thousands of troops on Europe's eastern borders. Henry Ridgewell has more.
A new government for Germany, a new era for Europe's largest economy. 2 months after the election, the Social Democrats, under Olaf Scholz, Germany's next chancellor, agreed to lead a coalition alongside the Green Party and the Free Democrats. Scholz pledged to strengthen Germany's alliances.
Our friendship with France, our partnership with the United States, and a commitment to peace and prosperity in the world are the pillars on which our foreign policy is based.
That peace appears increasingly fragile on Europe's eastern borders. Russia has deployed around 90,000 troops alongside military hardware close to its border with Ukraine and continues to support separatist rebels in Ukraine's Donbass region. Outgoing Chancellor Angela Merkel Thursday warned of tougher sanctions.
Any further aggression against the sovereignty of Ukraine would carry a high price. That's totally clear.
Russia is also supporting Belarus, which Europe accuses of manufacturing a migrant crisis on its border with Poland. So how will Germany's new government deal with these immediate security challenges? The 177-page coalition agreement restates strong German support for NATO as the basis of European security.
Broadly, there's continuity, but what is interesting is that there's also quite a strong rhetoric when it comes to supporting civil society in Russia, and also quite a strong rhetoric when it comes to countering the autocratic challenge that is coming from Russia. And here you definitely see the footprint of the Green Party, which has entered the coalition.
Green Party leader Annalena Baerbock will be Germany's next foreign minister. Her first major decision will be to approve the opening of the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline connecting Russia and Germany. Critics fear the project could be used to blackmail Europe. The US recently tightened sanctions on Russian companies involved in its construction.
The Greens that were actually from the beginning opposed to Nord Stream 2 did not want to use their political capital to enforce a stop of Nord Stream 2 in the coalition treaty.
What of the personal relationships? Angela Merkel was brought up in East Germany under communism and speaks fluent Russian.
This gave her special access to the Russian president. Olaf Scholz doesn't have this background, but he's very much aware of the situations where he always argued that might does not make right, and that this is one of the bases for his understanding of foreign policy and also of policy towards Russia.
Scholz said Germany must be ready for a new world order.
The world will change, it will become multipolar, which means there will be many strong countries and powers across the globe, which will have influence on what happens in the future.
For now, much of the new government's focus will be at home on the soaring coronavirus infection rate. COVID-related deaths this week surpassed 100,000 since the start of the pandemic. A grim milestone as the coalition prepares to take the reins of power in December. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
Portugal's Golden Visa program puts people who invest in the country on a path towards Portuguese citizenship and thus greater access to the European Union. These new investors are looking to take advantage of a good investment climate, but with a deadline looming. VOA's Laura Bowman has our story.
A warm climate by the sea, Mediterranean food and lifestyle, a high ranking on the Global Peace Index. What's not to like about Portugal? Investors have been signing up for the Portugal Golden Visa program for years and for a variety of reasons, especially investors from mainland China. Now investment advisors are getting interest from Hong Kong residents too.
What is interesting is the main driver for all investors is not only for Hong Kong, it's for all investors around the world, is to have a plan B in life. And plan B also is in many cases related to having children or giving their children the possibility of studying or working or living in Europe.
Hong Kong residents unhappy about China's new national security law is another reason they're looking for a plan B, say investment advisors. But it's not just Chinese nationals who are interested in Portugal.
We have countries from South Africa, from Turkey, from Brazil. So it's very spread. Nowadays in the US, we have a lot of American clients coming to Portugal. It's unbelievable the amount of Americans that has been coming to Portugal.
To get a residency permit leading to citizenship in roughly 5 years, an investor can create a company which offers jobs, buy or renovate property, or invest in a range of capital funds. But on January 1st, 2022, changes are coming to the program. For example, the amount required to subscribe to an investment fund will go up from 350,000 euros to 500,000 euros. And there's more.
In the investment route, so for instance, capital transfer that until the end of the year will be 1 million euros, it will be raised to 1.5 million euros. In terms of the property route, the properties located in Lisbon, Porto and the coast will be excluded from the program, so you can only invest in low density areas, so mainly in the interior of Portugal.
Gruner says these changes have put the pressure on, with investors from all over rushing in before the investment and property deals become less attractive. Laurel Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
And that wraps up our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, D.C., thank you for watching.